Season 5 is upon us. It's quite obvious that many changes that we're seeing currently are somewhat directed towards Season 5, and also many of the changes to gods, etc. are relatively minor compared to patches beforehand, as a lot of the energy is probably already more focused on what will come in Season 5. We're already seeing a first taste of what to expect. We know that there will be overhauls of many game elements, for example probably the UI and things like that, as well as having the new map teased a little bit, and we kinda can see a direction of where this is all headed. Today we'll talk about the changes that I would like to see in Season 5. These changes are all across the board and across different fields, so they don't necessarily have to reflect the first one being my most important one, but rather I would like to see these changes whichever field they are for. Number 1. A bigger map. Well, we kinda know that already. With sufficient jungle farm. That's the part we don't know yet. At the moment, the jungle farm can be effectively used in a way where you can run across the jungle and get enough XP that way, but it's always more efficient to share, and you will have many laners go off into the jungle to grab a lot of the farm there as well. I would prefer a jungle that is pretty much almost exclusive to the jungler, so the jungler will do buff camps or whatnot whenever he thinks it's suitable, especially in the early game, and then later stages others can do the jungle as well, which encourages laners to stay around the lane at least, and the jungler to farm his jungle effectively and make sure that everyone on the map gets their buffs and so on at the right time. This would make for strategical jungling where the jungler decides which lane gets an extra push and extra benefit. And that could shift the balance in a match very much and could make especially the early game more interesting if you consider how these shifts already worked when, for example, hunters started taking the red buff. Point number 2 goes kind of in the same direction. I would really like to see a jungle item that is an incentive for solo farming camps rather than Bamba's Mask, which at the moment is still encouraging to share camps with others. Also, I would like to see it made in a way that is only really beneficial for the jungler and not for everyone on the map. If it goes back to being a more expensive starter item, I could even imagine something like giving it different final forms an option, so more like the way that League of Legends did it, where you are able to upgrade your jungle item into other items that are effective for you, and that will be better the more you farmed your jungle camps. The third thing I'd like to see goes in a very different direction. I would like to see more counter items as well as counter skills. As it stands, there are counter items that they are somewhat rare though. I would like to see counter items versus full bruiser comps, as well as counter items versus full burst comps. So for example, we have Concise against bruisers, but it only works so well when only specific characters can really make effective use of it. And similar goes for Soul Reaver or especially Ethereal, which like Concise is also hindered somewhat by the protections that the enemy builds, and bruisers usually have a lot of protections. So if we for example had an ability focused Concise for physicals, that could make for a lot more counterplay to prevent certain comps from being too strong in the meta. So as we had this lately with more heavy bruiser comps, or in earlier metas with just very heavy damage focus. And this goes on to other parts. For example, if you think of the counter items that are against crit. We used to have a few iterations there, but now we don't really have any that are worth mentioning that are specifically against crit. We have Height of the Nemean Lion, which works against crit, but it's not something a mage would build just to prevent crit damage in most situations. So really, there is a bit of flexibility that could be fit in terms of items by just adding more counters. And the same goes for abilities. We could have gods that have abilities that do more percentage health or that shred through protections with certain abilities, just punishing you for how much health you have. Or we could have gods similar to Nemesis or Kuzenbo, which kind of have an interaction that allows them to counter burst more effectively, but maybe not the same again, not another reflect, but rather maybe a god that has an ultimate that will allow them to absorb all the damage that they take over a certain amount of time and then shoot it as a projectile or something. There are many options that could be done here, but I would just like to see a little more counterplay instead of gods that just have more generic playing kits, and the counterplay comes more from them being picked because they're strong, or rather stronger than other picks. As a fourth point, I would like to see Hi-Rez distancing their development more and more from pub stompy gods. Now, pub stompy gods are the gods that really dominate on lower levels of play, but then don't really perform on high levels of play where a team knows how to counter them. Namely, for example, Loki, Arachne, Bakasura. These gods are okay, I guess, in a way where in certain environments they can perform very well. In ranked, even sometimes they can do well until a certain level of play, simply because they are just effective against a non-coordinated team. But I don't think this is what we should strive for. I think this promotes, in a way, an unhealthy playstyle, because people that get too used to these gods, that begin on these gods and then stick to them, will not really learn to branch out from them, not really learn other gods too well, or learn what other gods do, and really never experience the full game, as long as they have the feeling that they can dominate by pop stomping. While this is not inherently bad, I just feel like it's rather boring. And I think that even some of the players that play those characters think it's boring, or I rather know for a fact, but they keep doing it because it's an easy win and they enjoy winning. Now, an example of how this can go better would be Thanatos versus Loki. Thanatos is a pop stompy god that has very high burst on early levels and therefore shuts down many players before they can even start the game, essentially. Has certain tools like the execute that are relatively easy to pull off, and so on. But Thanatos is a god that, despite that, can be played on higher levels of play. There are tools that he has, there are things in which he is very effective that allow him to be played in competitive. There's the CC on his ultimate, there is his silence if you use it effectively, and while he's not a top tier pick in most situations of the time, he has a reason to be picked. And if it's only to crush tanky front lines. Loki, on the other hand, is purely single target focused burst and doesn't really provide any utility outside of that, or anything that would make him worthwhile being picked in a competitive match. He can still pop stomp like Thanatos, but he doesn't have the other side of the coin, and I wish that would happen for those low tier pop stomp characters. Point number 5. Item separation. I would like to see certain items not in the hands of certain gods. You know what I'm talking about here. I think that there should be certain items that are better for assassins and others that are better for hunters, without having the constant struggle of trying to figure out how to balance an item for both roles and not have one take it away from the other. Usually hunters taking it away from everyone. And likewise the same thing going for solo laners versus supports. There are certain items that overlap and it's just kind of unnecessary most of the time. It's great when a solo laner can pick up a support item in the build and it's decent still. For example, we sometimes see solo laners picking something like Sovereignty or God of Thebes up, and that's the way I like it to be, but I'd rather not have an item that is heavily competed for, like we saw this way back in the day with Breastplate of Valor. The main reason here is obvious. It's just very frustrating for a support player when their prices spike for their items because of solo laners. Point number 6. I would like to see farm gods that are not boring. At the moment we have some farm gods like Kukulkan or Loki that essentially spend most of their time in lane not doing much at all, sitting towards the tower and just grinding their farm until they're level 20 or whatever. There are better ways to do that. I would like to point over to League of Legends here once again, as much as many of you don't like it. Nasus there is a great example of that. This is a warrior type god that's very tanky, but benefits from staying in lane very long and farming, because that way he will get more damage as well, and then he can in the end game be a character that has both tankiness and high damage, but it's fair and balanced because of the way he has to farm for it. And this farm requires him to last hit minions and go into melee range to do that. This risk basically offsets for the fact that he's so focused on farming, and you still have something to keep you busy, and there's something for the opponent to keep track of, or at least ensure that it's not working as well for you as it could be otherwise. And that, I think, makes it interesting. That makes it more of a challenge at least, whereas farming in Smite kinda doesn't really offer that so far. Point number 7. I would like to see a clean and simple interface. We do have this minimalistic interface picture from years ago that has been teased back then but never became a reality. I would still like to see that, or something along that lines. Make it optional, make it so that everyone can have their own UI, but please give us the option to have one that is not as cluttered and that kind of fits the style that Smite has nowadays more. Point number 8. I always say it and I have to say it in this one. I would love to see a health HUD in Smite. Just 2 bars on the side of your character that show you your health and your mana. So A, it doesn't block the vision above your character like one of the health bar options does. And B, you don't have to look at the bottom of the screen to see your health. I think this is the best feature you could possibly imagine for this kind of perspective of a game. I loved it since World of Warcraft, and I don't think it's too hard to implement. I would love to see it. Ajax asked me to show that other people would be interested in this as well, so if you would like to see this, make sure to follow me on Twitter, twitter.com/DukeSlothTV. I will be posting a poll there soon with a picture and example, and well, if it gets more votes, then it's more likely that it will make it into the game. But we're not done here, there's one more bonus point. I would like to see Ron Jobbard winning the caster. That's it for today. Thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. If you're not subscribed yet, feel free to click the sub button and maybe the bell. It really helps me out. Also, I do give away codes from time to time. If you're early on the video, you may be able to find one in the description or in the comments down below. So that's a little extra benefit from that bell. Life is still super busy at the moment, so sorry if I skip a video from time to time, but I'm trying to make it as regular as possible. As such, I hope to see you guys back here tomorrow. DukeSloth out.